Luffy and Zoro had barely begun to breathe as a crew when they reached the next shore, a place that looked as if it had once held joy, but now trembled under silence. Orangetown was almost a ghost town when they arrived, and it wasn't because time had taken its toll. It was fear, real heavy and human fear that pressed like a storm cloud over the cracked streets and shuttered homes. And that's where we first begin to see the real difference between Luffy the boy in a straw hat and Luffy the force that changes lives. This is not just the arc where Nami is introduced. It's the arc where survival wears a smile, theft becomes a language of resistance, and pirates become more than villains. It's the first arc that asks a real question. What does it cost to protect yourself when the world offers you nothing but cruelty? We meet Nami as she is, sharp, agile, untrusting. Her introduction is almost a con. She flirts with the idea of betrayal as easily as she pockets treasure, and yet you can feel the weight behind her eyes. This is someone who's playing a role not to gain, but to survive. She's not a thief. She's a survivor of injustice who has learned to bend every rule because the rules were never made to protect her in the first place. And isn't that something many of us understand, how easy it is to judge someone for stealing until we know what was taken from them first? The villain of Orangetown is Buggy the Clown, and on the surface, he's ridiculous. Bright colors, bombastic arrogance, chopped up body flying in pieces. But underneath that absurdity is something telling, a pirate clinging so hard to his ego, to his identity, that he splits himself into fragments to keep it intact. Buggy is the kind of man who wraps cruelty in humor, who performs dominance as if the act alone will make it real. He's insecure power made loud, and when he faces Luffy, it's like watching a balloon float toward a flame. But what matters most in this arc isn't the fight, it's the mirror it holds to its characters. Luffy sees through Nami's schemes, not because he's naive, but because he chooses to believe people are worth more than their pain. He sees her hate for pirates and doesn't flinch. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't try to convince her to like him. He just acts with consistency, with kindness. That's what gets to her. That's what always gets to people in One Piece. It's not that Luffy is the strongest. He is, but strength is only ever half the story. It's the way he chooses to use it. Not to conquer, not to impress, but to break cages open. Orangetown is a small arc in the grand scheme, but it's where One Piece begins to teach its rhythm. Trust must be earned. Pain is carried in silence, and freedom means more than just being able to sail. It means helping others stand up again, even if they bite the hand that offers help. And that's what Luffy does again and again. He doesn't ask for allegiance. He offers it, that quiet promise, in the way he stands, in the way he laughs, in the way he gets angry, not for himself, but for others. This arc ends with Nami not yet joining the crew, but the seed is planted. She has seen something unfamiliar in Luffy. Someone who doesn't lie, someone who doesn't take, someone who doesn't ask her to change before offering friendship. And sometimes that's all we need. Not someone to fix us, just someone to witness us without judgment. When Luffy fights Buggy, it isn't just a clash of fists, it's a clash of philosophies. Buggy is a man who builds fear to maintain control. He bombs the town, mocks his subordinates, and turns his own body into a fragmented weapon. It's the most literal image of a man torn apart by his own need to dominate. He's a child of the pirate world who grew bitter instead of bold, who took the lessons of pain and turned them into performance. But Luffy laughs, Luffy stretches, Luffy protects a small dog guarding the treasure no one else sees the value in. That scene with the dog Choo Choo is easy to overlook, but it is, in its quiet, wordless grief, one of the most human moments in the arc. The dog stands guard over a burned down pet food shop, still watching over what remains of his owner's legacy. And Luffy doesn't laugh at this. He doesn't call it stupid or silly. He understands. In fact, he stands with Choo Choo. He sees that sometimes all you can do is protect what you love, even when it's already gone, even when everyone else has walked away. Luffy doesn't just beat up Buggy for the town, he does it for Choo-Choo, for a dog guarding ashes. That's where One Piece starts to teach us something deeper. That dignity exists even in the smallest acts. That standing still in grief can be as noble as charging into battle. That memory, loyalty, and love are not about logic or efficiency or even usefulness. They're about what makes us whole, even when the world has carved pieces from us. Choo-Choo is every one of us who has lost someone and tried to keep the memory alive by guarding the ruins. And Nami watches all of this. She watches Luffy treat a dog with respect. She watches him fight not for pride, but for justice. She sees, maybe for the first time in a long while, that not every pirate is evil, that not every man who sails under a skull flag is there to take. Some are there to give back what the world has stolen. When the arc ends, Nami still isn't ready to trust. That's honest, that's real. Healing doesn't happen in a single battle. She walks away, but she leaves behind the bitterness in her tone, if only slightly. Something has shifted, a crack in the armor. Luffy doesn't chase her. He just smiles that impossibly wide smile, like he knows she'll return when she's ready. And this is what One Piece does again and again. It shows that family isn't about blood, or even about shared goals. It's about presence. It's about standing next to someone when they have no reason to believe in you. It's about showing up again and again without needing thanks. That's what makes Luffy's crew grow. Not power, not fear, not glory. Just love. Plain, stupid, courageous love. Orange Town isn't the flashiest arc. It's not the saddest or the most action-packed, but it is the first arc that asks you, what are you willing to fight for? And who will stand with you when the dust settles?